They looked like the perfect family on TV, but behind the scenes, the Brady Bunch stars were hiding dark secrets. The TV mom dated her on-screen son, the oldest daughter traded sex for drugs, and the middle brother made millions after quitting Hollywood completely. From cocaine addiction to secret love affairs, here's what really happened when the cameras stopped rolling on America's favorite family. Florence Henderson. Florence Henderson will always be remembered as Carol Brady, the smiling mom with the perfect hair and a gentle voice. But once the cameras stopped rolling, her real life looked very different from the picture-perfect world of the Brady Bunch. Behind the scenes, Florence was fighting her own battles, financially, emotionally, and sometimes even publicly. Even though the show was a massive hit, Florence didn't make much money from it. Syndication deals and merchandise made millions, but the cast saw very little of that. She once said that playing a TV mom didn't exactly come with a fat paycheck. Thankfully, she found other ways to stay financially strong. Her face became just as familiar in commercials for Wesson Oil and Polident. These ads weren't just side gigs, they became her main source of income. While fans loved her for being a motherly figure, companies trusted her for the same reason. And it worked. She became one of the top celebrity endorsers in America. But success on camera didn't protect her from heartbreak at home. After 29 years of marriage and 4 kids, her marriage ended in divorce. Florence kept the details private, but it clearly hit her hard. Around the same time, she started having panic attacks and a fear of flying. Regular therapy didn't help, so she tried something different, hypnotherapy, and surprisingly, it worked. She not only overcame her fears, but she also found emotional peace. It wasn't just about curing phobias. It helped her keep performing and living fully. Florence wasn't afraid to break barriers either. In the 1960s, she made history by becoming the first woman to guest host The Tonight Show. At the time, that was a big deal. Late-night TV was a man's world, and Florence walked right in and took the stage. Even after the Brady Bunch faded from the spotlight, she didn't disappear. She kept working, hosting shows, doing cooking segments, and even dancing on national TV. At 76, she joined Dancing with the Stars and kept going almost until her final days. Just 3 days before her death, she was still on set, cheering someone on. But not all of her post-Brady years were smooth. In 2008, Maureen McCormick, who played her TV daughter Marcia, released a memoir filled with wild claims. She hinted at stories involving Florence that fans never expected. Florence never confirmed the stories, but she didn't completely deny them either. Still, she handled the situation with grace. Instead of lashing out, she said she understood why these kinds of stories get published. They sell, and she refused to judge. In fact, she supported McCormick later that year, showing up in the audience of Dancing with the Stars to cheer her on. Mike Brady. Robert Reed became a household name as Mike Brady, the all-American dad from the Brady Bunch. But once the show ended in 1974, Reed was desperate to break away from that image. He didn't want to be remembered just as a smiling sitcom father. He had classical training, serious talent, and a strong desire to take on deeper, more challenging roles. That's when he took a shocking turn in his career, playing a transgender doctor in an episode of Medical Center in 1975. It was a groundbreaking role for the time, and Reed nailed it. The performance earned him his first Emmy nomination and showed the world that he was much more than Mike Brady. From there, he kept proving himself. In Rich Man, Poor Man, he played a man battling alcoholism and a broken family. In Roots, he portrayed a slave owner with chilling complexity. These weren't easy roles. They were heavy, emotional, and far from the squeaky clean world of the Brady Bunch. But Reed was done playing it safe. He wanted people to see the real depth of his acting. And they did. Behind the scenes, though, Reed's life was filled with conflict. He was a gay man living in a time when being open about that could end a career, so he kept it hidden. That pressure to stay silent affected him deeply. Co-star Florence Henderson would later say he was often unhappy. He also clashed with the show's producer, Sherwood Schwartz, over scripts he thought were childish or unrealistic. Things got so tense that Reed refused to appear in the show's final episode. Instead of a heartfelt goodbye, goodbye. Mike Brady was written off as being away on a business trip. It was a quiet, awkward exit for someone who had been the heart of the show. Then came the biggest shock of all. When Reed died in 1992, the public was told it was from colon cancer, but later, the Associated Press revealed he was also HIV positive. That detail had never been made public before, and it changed the way people saw him. In the early 1990s, HIV was still surrounded by fear and stigma. Reed had chosen to keep it a secret, and many understood why. After his death, people began to look at his life differently. They saw the pain he carried, the pressure he lived under, and the courage it took to still chase serious roles and push boundaries on screen. Barry Williams. Barry Williams was just a teenager when he became Greg Brady on the Brady Bunch, and for 5 years, that show was everything to him. But in 1974, it ended with a shock. He got a phone call from ABC saying the show was canceled. No warning, no goodbye. He drove to the studio, probably still hoping it was all a mistake, but when he arrived, his parking space had already been painted over. Just like that, he was out. His time on the show was over, and so was the comfort that came with it. He later called that moment a wake-up call, a harsh lesson about how fast Hollywood can forget you. For someone who spent nearly all of his teenage years playing one role, the sudden end left him completely lost. He was stuck in that awkward space a lot of young actors fall into, known but not wanted. Casting directors didn't know what to do with him anymore. They told him, in so many words, to disappear for a few years and come back when people stopped seeing Greg Brady. When those years came, Williams didn't handle them well. Instead of moving forward, he fell into a sort of delayed rebellion. During the time he was supposed to be chasing new roles, he was refusing to even audition. He thought his past work should be enough. He didn't see why he had to start over again, but that attitude cost him. Work stopped coming in. His money dried up. He had to borrow just to stay afloat and ended up selling his house. It took hitting rock bottom for him to realize the truth. If he wanted to survive in the business, he had to let go of the ego and start proving himself all over again. And that's exactly what he did. In the early 90s, he wrote a book, Growing Up Brady. I was a teenage Greg, and it was nothing like the clean-cut world people remembered. He pulled the curtain back on all the behind-the-scenes secrets. Drunken golf cart races on the Paramount lot, teenage makeout sessions, and tension with co-stars. He even wrote about going on a date with Florence Henderson, who played his on-screen mom, and getting close to Maureen McCormick, who played his sister. The book was a hit. It stayed on the bestseller list for months and gave fans a whole new way of looking at the Brady Bunch. Barry had found a new identity, not just Greg, but the guy who told the real story. He even helped turn the book into a TV movie, making sure the world saw the truth behind the smiles. He also teamed up with his old co-star, Christopher Knight, to start a podcast called The Real Brady Bros. In it, they looked back at each episode, talked about what really happened behind the scenes, and shared memories fans had never heard. They laughed about the past and connected it to the present, even bringing in special guests who loved the show just as much. Maureen McCormick. Maureen McCormick became a household name as Marcia Brady, the picture-perfect, all-American girl. But the moment the cameras stopped rolling, her real life started falling apart. The end of the Brady Bunch in 1974 didn't just close a chapter, it pushed her into a world far darker than anyone expected. At just 18, Maureen started using cocaine. What began as partying turned into a full-blown addiction that nearly destroyed everything. She was no longer the girl next door. She was chasing highs, skipping auditions, and making choices she'd later regret deeply. In her own words, she admitted to trading sex for drugs and even showed up high to a meeting with Steven Spielberg. She thought she might land a role in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Instead, Spielberg offered her an orange and sent her on her way. But it wasn't just drugs. Maureen also battled bulimia and depression. Living in the shadow of Marcia Brady's flawless image crushed her. She couldn't measure up, and the pressure nearly broke her. At one point, her parents almost called the police because they didn't know how else to help her. Her reputation in Hollywood took a hit, and her phone stopped ringing. Everything changed when she met Michael Cummings in 1985. He didn't just fall in love with her, he gave her a choice. Him or the drugs. She chose him. And that moment became the turning point. With his support and help from her family, Maureen got clean. She's now been sober for over 40 years. That victory became the foundation for a new life and a second chance. She slowly rebuilt her career, starting with reality TV. She showed a different side of herself on Celebrity Fit Club and I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, proving she wasn't just a washed-up child star. She even did voice work on Johnny Bravo, where she poked fun at her past with charm and humor. In 2019, she reunited with her former Brady Bunch castmates for a very Brady renovation on HGTV. The show brought back memories, but this time they were sweet, not painful. For the first time in a long while, she could look back at her past with pride, not shame. Then came a twist no one saw coming. Home renovation. In 2020, she began co-hosting Frozen in Time, a show about redesigning outdated homes. Somehow, the former teen idol had reinvented herself as a TV personality in a whole new space, combining nostalgia with something fresh and unexpected. Christopher Knight. Christopher Knight will always be remembered as Peter Brady, the middle son in one of TV's most iconic families. But behind the scenes, he was never fully comfortable in that role. By 1977, when he was just 19, he was already trying to break free. During a trip to Utah, he admitted he didn't even want to do the Brady Bunch variety shows. He didn't like the singing and dancing, and he definitely didn't like being stuck in a role he felt had no room to grow. He wanted to do real acting, comedy, action, something with a little more grit. He even said the show felt too idealistic, especially for people living in big cities. It was clear he didn't want to be Peter Brady forever. And he wasn't. In 1988, Knight walked away from acting almost completely. He jumped into the computer industry, which was a bold move for a former child star. But he didn't just fade into the background, he crushed it. Within a year and a half at MarTech, he closed their first $1 million deal and won Employee of the Year. He wasn't playing around. By 1989, he was already a vice president at another tech company. He had swapped scripts for sales and was winning in a whole new arena. The 1990s were even bigger. Knight co-founded Visual Software in 1991, a company doing advanced 3D graphics way ahead of its time. Under his leadership, sales exploded from $400,000 to over $4 million in less than a year. Not long after, he started another company called KidWise Learningware, making interactive products for kids. He jumped from one success to the next. In 1996, he joined a keyboard company called Adesso and doubled their sales in just 4 months. A year later, he was working at IX Micro, and by 1998, the company's sales had grown from under $2 million to a jaw-dropping $63 million. Nobody saw that coming from Peter Brady, but he wasn't done. In 1998, Knight co-founded Escape Labs, a company that developed cutting-edge video devices. It got so much attention that a bigger tech firm, Hauppauge Computer Works, bought them out in 2000. Knight stayed on to lead the brand until 2003. For someone who once danced awkwardly on a TV variety show, his transformation into a legit tech entrepreneur was nothing short of incredible. His personal life, though, was just as dramatic, especially his marriage to model and reality TV star Adrienne Curry. They met in 2005 on VH1's The Surreal Life. He was 53, she was 28. The age gap became part of their story, and it played out on reality TV in a show called My Fair Brady. Viewers watched as they got engaged and then married in Curry's hometown in 2006. Even Florence Henderson, TV's original Brady mom, warned against it. After their 2011 separation, she joked that she'd probably end up counseling the divorce too. Sure enough, the relationship ended for good in 2013. According to their rep, they'd simply grown too different to make it work. Eve Plum. Eve Plum became famous as Jan Brady, the awkward middle sister forever living in the shadow of Marcia. But what happened after the Brady Bunch ended is far more interesting than anyone expected. While most child stars either disappear or get stuck playing the same role over and over, Eve took a risk that shocked her fans. She walked away from a 5-year contract for the Brady Bunch Variety Hour, becoming the only original cast member to say no. That decision killed her her chance at easy fame, but it also saved her from being stuck in the past. Instead of smiling for the camera in another light-hearted show, she made a bold turn. In 1976, she played a teen runaway-turned-prostitute in Dawn, Portrait of a Teenage Runaway. It was raw, dark, and a complete break from her squeaky clean image. 2 years later, she showed more range in Little Women. These roles weren't just new characters. They were her way of telling Hollywood, "I'm more than Jan Brady." But that wasn't an easy message to send. No matter what she did, people kept bringing her back to Jan. In interviews, she admitted it was exhausting. Fans couldn't move on, and casting directors couldn't either. She once said, "That's what's so disappointing, that I'm not here," meaning the industry couldn't see her as anyone else. Still, her story isn't just about rejection. She didn't slam the door on the Brady Bunch. Over the years, she returned again and again in The Brady Girls Get Married, The Brady Bride, A Very Brady Christmas, and The Bradys. But every time she came back, it was with a different mindset. She'd already spent years rebuilding herself as a dramatic actress, so jumping back into comedy wasn't easy. She admitted that getting the timing right again took work. As she got older, the typecasting problem got even worse. Casting directors saw her as a kid, not a grown woman with years of experience. She tried to stay hopeful. She kept auditioning. She said she loved TV and wasn't ready to give up, but there were times when she couldn't understand why the calls stopped coming. "You can drive yourself insane trying to figure it out," she said. Then came a surprising twist. In 2022, Eve launched a coffee brand called Happiness Included Coffee. It wasn't just a celebrity side hustle, it was personal. The name came from her motto, and it honored the little dogs she loves with her husband. Their first date was at a coffee shop, and now part of their business supports animal welfare. It showed a different side of Eve, one that was creative, caring, and totally in charge of her story. In 2025, Eve Plum is 66 years old and still doing things her own way. She hasn't erased Jan Brady from her life, but she's not stuck there either. Mike Lookinland was just 9 years old when he became Bobby Brady, the youngest son on the Brady Bunch. His freckled face and innocent charm made him a household name across America. But behind that smile was a young boy going through a lot more than fans ever saw. The producers didn't just cast him, they changed him. His strawberry blonde hair was dyed jet black and straightened to match the other Brady boys. Under the hot studio lights, the dye would sometimes melt and run down his face. It wasn't just a makeover, it was a small sign of how much control the show had over him. Before the Brady fame, Mike had already been in dozens of commercials. His parents chose the Brady Bunch over another show because they thought it would be better for him to work with other kids. But when the show ended in 1974, Mike had a hard time moving on. Everywhere he went, he was still Bobby Brady. Half of his later acting credits were just reunions and spin-offs of the original show. At one point, he was so tired of playing Bobby again that he asked for double the money, hoping they'd say no. Instead, they said yes, and even raised everyone else's pay too. Life after childhood stardom didn't come easy. In his 20s, Mike struggled with identity and fell deep into alcoholism. He once said that he tried to live his childhood during his 20s, but that it was dangerous. And he was right. On a November night in 1997, he was driving home from work as a cameraman when he lost control of his car and flipped it. His blood alcohol level was over 3 times the legal limit. Police took him to the hospital, then jail. As they booked him in, someone whistled the Brady Bunch theme song. It was surreal, sad, and humiliating all at once. That crash changed everything. Mike got clean. He went through rehab, completed community service, paid fines, but more importantly, he stayed sober. That was the real turning point. Long before the crash, he had already started pulling away from Hollywood. After high school, he moved to Utah and tried college, but dropped out and started working behind the camera instead. He took whatever job he could find on set, watering plants, moving equipment, anything to get his foot in the door. Over time, he became a trusted cameraman. In Utah's growing film scene, there was always another gig. He even got to work on a Stephen King miniseries and made a small appearance on screen. But then, something unexpected happened. His wife brought home a library book about concrete countertops. Mike saw it and instantly made a decision. He quit the film business and started his own company making decorative concrete. It was called Just Add Water. This was more than just a job change. It was freedom from everything Hollywood had ever demanded of him. Today, he builds countertops in Utah, far from the spotlight. Susan Olsen. Susan Olsen became a household name as the sweet pig-tailed Cindy Brady on the Brady Bunch. She was only 8 when the show launched, and her lisp and charm made her a fan favorite across America. But that fame came with a price. When the show ended in 1974, Olsen tried to move on, but casting directors couldn't see past Cindy. No matter how gritty or different the role, they couldn't imagine her as anything other than the youngest Brady kid. She even gave her best performances in auditions for darker roles, addicts, criminals, anything to shake off the Brady image. But the answer was always the same. We just can't cast Cindy Brady in this. By her early 20s, Olsen was exhausted. She had trained at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, but the acting world had slammed the door. So she walked away. She turned to graphic design instead, a world far from Hollywood. For 10 years, she built a solid career, designing shoes for Converse, illustrating children's books, and even publishing a quirky coffee table book in 2009 that poked fun at the Brady Bunch Variety Hour, a failed spin-off that many fans would rather forget. But her life after fame didn't stay quiet for long. One of the strangest rumors that followed her was that she acted in adult films. The truth? She never appeared nude, but she did provide spaceship sound effects for an X-rated sci-fi spoof. It was a weird credit, but one that stuck with her forever. Then came talk radio. Olsen co-hosted political shows and seemed to find a new voice until it backfired. In 2016, she got into a heated on-air argument with a gay actor and was fired for making homophobic remarks. She claimed her words were taken out of context, but the damage was done. Her reputation took a major hit, and so did her career. Years later, she made headlines again. In 2024, she claimed a Brady Bunch reboot was canceled because of her political beliefs. She said producers grilled her over her support for Trump, her stance on vaccines, and her opinions on LGBTQ+ issues. She was supposed to play a podcaster version of Cindy, but said she was told she was too dangerous to be part of the show anymore. Still, there's another side to her, one not defined by controversy or politics. Olsen is a passionate animal rights advocate and served on the board of a rescue group called Precious Paws. She even used a reality show appearance to talk about adoption and rescue work. Her love for animals has been one of the most consistent and heartfelt parts of her life after Hollywood. Her family life has had its own struggles. In 2004, Olsen revealed her son Michael was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. The news changed everything for her, and she became more aware of neurodiversity. In a touching twist, Michael was named after her TV brother, Mike Lookinland, showing that the Brady cast bond went far beyond the screen. Olsen also battled severe migraines for years. She later became a spokeswoman during Migraine Awareness Month, using her platform to spread awareness and help others dealing with the same pain. Ann B. Davis. Ann B. Davis was known to millions as Alice, the lovable housekeeper from the Brady Bunch. She had that kind of warm, steady presence that made viewers feel like she was part of their own home. But when the show ended in 1974, she quietly walked away from the spotlight and never really came back. What followed was a dramatic and deeply personal transformation that most people never saw coming. She had already made her mark in showbiz. Long before the Brady Bunch, she had won 2 Emmys for her role on The Bob Cummings Show, and even had a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. But none of that seemed to matter anymore. In 1976, just 2 years after her last episode as Alice aired, she sold her Los Angeles home and moved to Denver. Not for another role or a new project, but to live with a religious community led by Bishop William Frey. It wasn't a publicity stunt. She meant it. She was done with Hollywood. Faith had always been a part of her life, but during her years in the entertainment industry, it had taken a back seat. She once said she felt like she'd been living in a castle, but only seeing one room. A Bible study group at her local parish opened all the other doors for her. And when she met Bishop Frey, things clicked. What started as friendly visits to his Denver home became something deeper. After just one vacation trip with the Frey family, she made up her mind. In January 1976, she packed up her life and never looked back. From then on, she shared a large house with the Freys and nearly 20 other people. Her daily routine was no longer about makeup chairs or camera calls. It was about early morning Bible studies, service work, and deep community living. She spent her time volunteering at a shelter for the homeless, dishes, doing laundry, and sorting socks. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Fame didn't impress her anymore. She once said that when she saw someone digging in a dumpster, she didn't feel sorry for them. She thought, that might be someone I know. She still showed up for the occasional Brady Bunch reunion. She'd film a few scenes, sing a few songs, and smile for the fans. But even then, she wasn't alone. She'd bring someone from her faith community with her, giving them a peek into her old world and giving others a chance to see how far she'd come. Her agents had understood from the beginning. She told them not to call her for at least a year. They said, "We get it. We're happy for you." She never returned to acting full-time. She didn't need to. Her new life gave her more peace than the red carpets ever had. When her community moved to Pennsylvania, she followed. And when they later settled in Texas, she followed again. In San Antonio, she found a new church home and got even more involved, singing in the choir, training lay readers, and even taking communion to older shut-ins. She was nearly 90, but she never stopped serving. Then, suddenly, in June 2014, it all came to an end. She slipped and hit her head in the bathroom. The fall caused a serious brain injury, and she never woke up. Just like that, the world lost Ann B. Davis. Florence Henderson was heartbroken. She said they'd spoken only months earlier, and Davis had sounded great. No one expected it. But in a way, Davis had already made peace with the idea of letting go. She once said, "I'm convinced we all have a God-shaped space in us. Until we fill that space with God, we'll never know what it is to be whole."